Now, difference between chemical and natural fertilizer. Now, this will help you to understand what is chemical and natural fertilizer. Naisha, can you please read out?
Sure. Chemical fertilizers. These are made up of inorganic salts. Natural fertilizers. These are made by the decomposition of plants and animals, also known as organic waste. Chemical fertilizers are prepared in factories,
Yeah.
and natural fertilizers are prepared in open places. Chemical fertilizers, humus is not deposited in soil. Natural fertilizers, deposits of humus layer is found in the soil. More amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium deposits in the soil.
Potash.
Oh, okay. And in natural fertilizers, there's less amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash deposits in the soil. In chemical fertilizers, decrease the health of soil, and natural fertilizers increase the soil health.
Correct. Very good. So basically what happens is that chemical fertilizers, basically it's like a shortcut way. It's a fast way. You just spray it, you get the effect. Right? Natural fertilizers is a long drawn process. It takes time. It will decompose, then it will be at some point in time, it will be soluble with water, it will aerate, it will take some months. It's slow, but it will not harm anyone. But this fellow is really very harmful. It will harm the soil, it will only help the crop, but it will harm everybody else. It will harm the soil, it will harm the water, it will harm the human being having it will harm the fishes. But natural fertilizers will not harm anyone. It will not harm anyone. It is the best. But it is extremely time consuming, one. Second, it might cause a lot of failures. As I said, there could be a fungal growth. If there's sudden rain, there would be a lot of molds into that natural fertilizers. It might go haywire. It's not in control basically.
Fertilizers are urea, superphosphate, potassium sulfate, ammonium phosphate, potassium phosphate, etc. Note: fertilizers are highly hygroscopic and leach soon into the soil. In addition, some micronutrients like sulfur and magnesium compounds are also added to the soil. Lime is often added to the soil to neutralize its acidity.
Correct. So this is one thing which I was telling, remember that it is not desirable to have an acidic soil. Acidic soil is always bad, right? But what happens is that, these fertilizers are highly acidic. They cause harm to the soil. Next season, next crop, when you grow now, you have to take a lot of effort to actually neutralize the soil. So what they do is that they add lime. What is lime? Lime is basically not that lime juice, but this is quick lime.
Slaked lime.
Slaked lime, correct, slaked lime, or also known as chuna in Hindi, right? Which is also being used for whitewashing places, right? This we know is highly acidic, calcium hydroxide. This is calcium hydroxide, right? Calcium hydroxide or calcium carbonate? What is slaked lime?
Ma'am, calcium hydroxide.
Calcium hydroxide, no? So basically this is very, basic, as in it has got a very basic property. So what it does is that, it kind of, this fertilizer, which is acidic, and lime, which is basic. So what it does is that it neutralizes the soil, right? So after neutralizing the soil, it becomes fit for it to grow plants properly. And the soil is also not kind of burdened much. It is not spoiled much, right? There are certain micronutrients like sulfur and magnesium. These are micronutrients, as in they are required in very little amounts, right? These are also known as at times trace elements, right? These are elements which are required in very little amount, but these are needed. Otherwise, the plants might have certain diseases like discoloration of leaf, growing small fruits. So sulfur, little bit of sulfur and magnesium is required to add in the soil. Application of different fertilizers. Alex, can you please read?
Okay, ma'am. Application of chemical fertilizers. Point number one. Time of application of different fertilizers is different for different crops at the different stages of growth. Point number two. Some fertilizers are added to the soil at the time of sowing. Some at the time of stem elongation and leaf growth. Point number three. Some towards flowering and reproductive growth.
Correct. So basically, every phase of the plant, of the crop, it requires different fertilizers. For example, at the initial, when it was like a sapling kind of a thing, when somebody had just sown the seed, maybe, it requires to be a little strong and sturdy, because when the plant is small, a small bacteria can, really infect the whole plant. So, it requires certain fertilizers which will make the plant or the sapling really sturdy, right? Now, at a later stage, when the crop has like really grown a little more taller, right? Now they need a fertilizer which will help it to, for giving out more flowers, right? So basically that is when maybe they'll add a lot of nitrogen, because nitrogen really helps in flowering, right? Now, after a certain time, when the crop really grows out, right, it requires the flowers to be healthy and to bloom into healthy fruits. I'm just drawing an apple, but this is not an apple tree, right? This could be maize or corn or paddy or whatever. So it requires a certain chemical, certain fertilizer, which would require it to grow very healthy, sturdy, big size crop fruits, right? So that is when they would add maybe a potash or a bone meal or something of that kind. So at every phase of the crop, different fertilizers are required, which is easy to identify in case of a chemical fertilizer. But in case of a manure, how can you do that? You really do not know the composition of the manure exactly. Every manure will be different, because every time the cow has eaten different amounts of food, and the output was different. It has eaten different kinds of grasses and leaves, so you really do not know what is the composition of the manure. So you can't identify, and blindly you can't put the manure overall, right? So that way chemical fertilizers are helpful, thinking that whenever whatever the crops require exactly, you kind of give a lock and key kind of an arrangement. Okay. Arjun, I don't know if you would be able to use Kirtana. Okay, Ronak, can you please read out the points?
Yes, ma'am. Points to be noted during the application. First, fertilizer should be used with utmost care. Second, too much use of fertilizers can upset the chemical nature of the soil and also result in the browning of the leaves of the crop plants. Third, fertilizers may also leach into the soil with rainwater to poison the groundwater. Otherwise, fertilizer is the sure, fastest and easiest way of providing mineral nutrition to the crop plants.
Correct. Thank you. So basically, overuse of fertilizers. Here, the farmer needs to be educated enough or literate enough, knowing that what is the amount of fertilizer that is to be used in how many days. Maybe, he needs to put that certain fertilizer just once a week. But he might think, oh, if I put it, twice a week, I'll get more output. He does that. What happens? The leaves become brown. So too much of anything is not good. So there's a word called optimum. Optimum means exact use of the substance. Fertilizers which have been used exactly the required amount at the required time, that is known as optimum use of fertilizers, right? And this we have already discussed, that it might leach into the soil. And if it leaches into the soil, obviously through rainwater, it will poison the groundwater, and from groundwater, it will go to the ocean, right? So this is, as it is the fastest way to provide nutrition, it is also the fastest way to, poison the soil.